my share on today will not be on the exact 3 prakim of the Rambam of today. It will be based on an Indian klali in Mitzvah, loosely based on something actually in Perek Yud. So forgive me, there's no such thing as Hasagas Gvul in Teda. I hope I won't be masig the Gvul of the person that's saying this year tomorrow, but hopefully you'll enjoy it, and hopefully it will add in the general learning of Hilchos Tumas Tzaraas, which is not an easy limud. Whatever I'm going to say today is not my own. It's from Teda's Brisk. Try to explain it as best as I can with my additions. Truth is that the aside of what I'm going to say, I first saw in the Sefer Rishima Shiurim on Masechta Brachas Daf Hey Amud Beis from Rabbi Moshe Weiss, Rabbi from Yeshiva University. But unfortunately, as I've mentioned before, when I bring down that Sefer, I found as I was doing more research, that the aside is really from his grandfather Reb Chaim in Chedushi Hagrach Alashas in Moed Katan. So I guess the person that wrote the Rishim Shiurim from Rabbi Yoshe didn't quite pick up that he's repeating something from his Zayda, or maybe Rabbi Soloveitchik didn't mention it, which I doubt. In any case, it's a very beautiful Indian. It's a very, very beautiful Indian. And I'd like to share it with you. So the Gemara in Brachas, Daf Hey Amud Beis, says, Amar Rav Yehuda, Negoyim ubanim einam yisurim shalava. So the Gemara asks, Negoyim loy, Vatanya, Kol mi sheyesh b'yechad ma'ba maris Negoyim alalu, einan elam mizbeach kapara. Okay, so the Gemara talks about, in Brachas, it's more of an Agadata Gemara about that Negoyim is a Mizbeach Shel Kapara. So Rashi explains, so the Gemara answers, one of the answers, the difference is Halon V'Aluhu, for Eretz Yisrael, for Baal. Rashi explains like this. It's very interesting. Rashi, Taka the Achronim on Hilchos Tzaraas talk about this Rashi a lot. Eretz Yisrael, Shari Chayma Mekudesh Ba, U'Mitzay L'Talim Shiluach Chutza Lahen. The Einan Yisurim Shalaba. In Eretz Yisrael, that you have to send the Mitzvah outside, so it's not Yisurim Shalaba. Bavel She'en Tunim Shiluach Lehen Mizbeach Kapara Havi Yisurim Shalaba. But Bavel is different. So Taisus asks right away, Akasha, what's Pshat? The whole concept of Shiluach Machnes, the whole concept of sending a Mitzvah out of the Machnes, was only when Yovel is Naig, only when there's a Yovel. And also, not only that, but also the din of Bati Arich Chaima, which we'll see in a second. And in the time of the Amirayim, the time of the Gemara Brachas, Daf Hey Amud Beis, there was no Yovel. So therefore, what's Pshat Rabbi Yechanan, and what is Rabbi Yechanan saying that something that was not Noig B'Yamav? This leads to a whole discussion, actually a fascinating discussion, whether I was going to talk about it, but there's no for a different time perhaps. Whether there is a concept of mitzvah today, even though there's no tara, there's a big machlekes harishonim, big machlekes achreinim. Whether there's a chiyuv to come to a kohen, many people say that the reason we don't do it is because number one, there's no way to be mitayr, so if there's no way to be mitayr, there's no way to be mitame. Another reason achreinim say because there's no kohen miyuchasim. There's a lot of reasons, but it's dealt with whether there is the concept of mitzvah today bisman hazeh. Okay, we're not going to get into that. So the question becomes, Taisus asks a very strong question on Rashi. What is Rashi talking about? Bavel or Yisrael, but there's no Yovel, there's no Bati Arich Chaima, so the whole thing doesn't apply. So Rabbi Soloveitchik says, and he says that it could be that there's a difference between the Kedushas Bati Arich Chaima, we're coming up to Purim Megillah, that's not the issue that we're talking about over here, but there could be that Kedushas Bati Arich Chaima is totally in Yovel, and it's Batel Bisman Hazeh, the whole din of selling the houses in Bati Arich Chaima, but the din of Shiluach Mitzayra be Bati Arich Chaima, this specific din of sending a Mitzayra out, it's a separate din. It's a separate din. It's not a din that's connected to Yovel, and it's not mitzad the reason that we have to send out, we'll explain in a second, bear with me. The reason that we have to send out a mitzayda from a Bati Arechayma is totally in a general halacha of sending out tmeim from the machnes. In other words, not only a mitzayda had to go out of the machnes, but also any tamei was not allowed to stay in the machne. But there's a different din in a mitzayda. In addition to sending out a tmeim, shiluach tmeim, there's a separate din of you have to send him mitzayda out. And he wants to say a nice word. He's trying to say that even though there's no din of Bati Arechayma, but there's a cheftza of Bati Arechayma. In other words, it's like you have to send out the mitzayda not because of the din of shiluch tmeim, but pashut there's a gather that a mitzayda is not allowed to be in a surrounded city. That's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. So in other words, it's the din of that's what he wants to say. That's Rashi Shita. The din of shiluach mitzayda from Bati Arechayma is chal even bisman hazeh. Even though there's no din of Bati Arechayma, and there's no Yovel, and they're not Mekudesh, so therefore it's not mitzvah Kedushas Bati Arechayma. It's a din of it's a din in and of itself of Tumas Tzaraas. So here he explains, which actually I told you before is actually a word from Reb Chaim in Chidushi Agrach Alashas in Moed Katan. I think it's Taf Tezayin. So the Rambam in Perek Yud of Hilchos Tzaraas Halacha Zayin says as follows. He says that the din of the mitzayda is very famous. Is she'iyah loy moishev levadei chutz le'ir shenema mechutz l'machna moishavei. The dover zeh, says the Rambam, ba'ayoris hamukafis chayma beretz Yisrael bilvad. The Rambam says this din of shiluach mitzayda of chutz le'ir, it only applies in certain cities and only in Eretz Yisrael. Ayoris mukafis chayma. That's the Rambam in Hilchos Tumas Tzaraas Perek Yud. But the Rambam in Hilchos Bias Migdash, Perek Gimel Halacha Bey, says he brings down a whole long halacha, and he says Mitzayda, Vazav, B'Tami Meis, these three serious tumas, Shloshtam b'Makam Echad, and the Mitzayda Badid Yeshev, Mishavi Zevachni Yisrael, B'Pesach Yishlayim B'Yufnim, etc. And he says, "Lefichach mishalchin esam b'tzayda chutz l'machnes shul chutz l'Yushalayim mimnei shul mitam b'viyah." Now, he goes through a whole thing how you have to send out a mitzayda from Yushalayim. So the kasha is, the question is, Reb Chaim asks, and why does the Rambam in Hilchos Bias Migdash Perek Gimel omit the halacha of what he says in Hilchos Tumas Tzaraas? That this din is only in Yerushalayim, and I'm sorry, it's from all Yaris Mukafis Chaymis, and in Hilchos Tumas Meis he says it's only Yerushalayim. L'chayda from Tumas Tzaraas, it's clear that it's in all the Yaris Mukafis Chaymis Eretz Yisrael. It's a stark stira, it's a stark kasha. In Hilchos Tumas Tzaraas is mashma that you have to send out the mitzayda from all the ayoris mekafes chaim in Eretz Yisrael, and in Hilchos Tumas Meis he only talks about Yerushalayim. Says Reb Chaim that it brings down from the beginning of the Rambam, where he brings down the minyan hamitzvos in the minyan hamitzvos hakotzer in the title to Hilchos Tumas Tzaraas. A mitzvah dalit over there is she'iyah hamitzayda mefursam b'kriyas begoda b'friyas reishay v'atoya al sofam. So the word of mefursam, says Reb Chaim, this is a special halacha of pirsum. That the mitzayda, it's not enough just to go out, but it has to be a din of piercing. He says, the Rambam says, there's two dinim in sending out the mitzayda mechutz l'machne. Two components to sending out the mitzayda mechutz l'machne according to the Rambam. Number one, pashit, like we said before, there's a general din of shiluach tmeim. That you have to send out the tmeim, you have to send out impure persons, whether it's Tommy Mace, whether it's Tzaraas or Zava, etc., etc. You have to send them out to Chutz Yushalayim. And then there's a second component. The component of Pirsum, that he is a mitzayda, to be mefarsim, to advertise that he's a mitzayda, and by sending him out of the machne, it creates a Pirsum, especially by renting his clothes and his head, etc. That we learn out from the pasuk Tami Yikra. So there, and so therefore there's two separate dinim. And then he one nafkamina would be on in these the difference between a mitzayda and stam tamei meis, whether he gets malchus or not, and in other words, so could be that according to the Rambam Hilchos Bias Migdash, so if he goes back into the Beis Hamikdash, he's over in a loisasa, and he gets malchus. If he goes into stam mukaf chaim, not Yerushalayim, not the Harabayis, so it's even though he's not allowed to. But he violated the concept, the tzivui of Tamei Yikra and Boded Yeshu Mechutz Lamachna. So he doesn't get malchus. That's what he wants to say. So therefore, now we can understand the stira between the two Rambams. In the Rambam, in Hilchos Bias Migdash, he only brings down the laws connected to a mitzayda that are included in the laws of Shiluach Tmeim. So that mitzad tuma, we have to send out the mitzayda also. He's also a tumah. He's like an abba. He's an abba tuma. That we send him out to the gimel machnas, and this is a kiyum of the mitzvah of shiluach tmeim chutz lamachna. On the other hand, when we're talking about sending out a mitzayda from ayoris mukafis chayma, this is not a din in every tumas meis. This is a din dafka in mitzayda, not because of shiluach atmeim, but mitzad pirsun lefarsam as tumasim. And this is clear in the Rambam in Perek Yud Halacha Ches. The Rambam writes, Tumas Tzaraas, a lady, Eina Peraz, Eina Peremes, etc. Asafam Eliyesheves Hi Michutz L'Ir U'Meidia La'Acherim Shehi Tmeya. So the question is, why does the Rambam have to say Afal Pish Eina Peraz U'Peremes? Nevertheless, she is Yesheves Michutz L'Ir. For sure, we know it's obvious that a lady has to sit michutz l'ir. So we know that she is not chai. She doesn't have to be peidim. But why does the Rambam have to emphasize that a lady also has to be made? She has to sit mechuyeves belasheves chutz l'ir. So he says, because this is the ikar inyan, this is the ikar kiyum, the ikar chiyuv of Tamei Yikra, that you would think that since she's pater from Peira Lifroy, she should also be pater from Badul Yeshu Mechutz Lamachna. Says the Rambam, no. Mitzad Peira she's chayim. Mitzad Tamei Yikra, she has to sit Mechutz Lir. So now we can understand better the Shittas Rashi, which we'll get back to the Rambam in a second. What we said before, that when the Gemara talks about sending out from a Bati Arechayim, is not talking about the Chefza of a Bati Arechayim. He's not talking about the Kedusha of the Bati Arechayim, because of course that's not Shayach anymore. It's only Shayach Bisman Shayovel Noig. But there's a Chefza of Bati Arechayim, which is a chelik of Pirsun, by sending him out in the even though there's no yovel and there's no kedusha but by sending him out of but it's more of a pirsum that the mitzayda is banished from the city. And the Rambam so wait, that's Rashi. So then we can also answer one more diuk in the Rambam in Perek Yud Halacha Zayin. The Rambam writes, the Dover Zeh Bayoris Hamukafes Chayma Be'eretz Yisrael Bilvad. So the question is, of course, we know that the Iker Din of Batei Arechayim is only in Eretz Yisrael. So why does the Rambam have to be madgish the word that is Eretz Yisrael dafka? So we said before exactly what we said, that the Shuach HaMetzayda is not mitzad the kedushas but inside the Chefza of Bat Arechayim. So you would think that therefore any place that there's a Arechayim, you would have to send that to Mitzayda. Comes the Rambam and tells you, no, this din of a Shluach Mitzayda is only in a Bat Arechayim Shebe'eretz Yisrael dafka. Just want to, just on the last okay, we'll stop over here, and it should be Mamshech next week.